So thanks lots first. I'm pretty nervous, actually, because the last time I gave a presentation here at university was for my Ph.D. thesis, and I was so sure I'd never going to be invited again. It took some years, but still it is. And I remember that because that time I prepared almost everything, prepared all the questions. Well, not all the questions, obviously, most of the questions. But I was also pretty much thinking about what to wear on that particular day. And probably all of you, even today, you were not randomly picking up something out of your shelves and racks back at home, but you were thinking about what would fit today properly, right? And that brings us to the core of this presentation, which is like thinking about the functions of clothing and how that works. And so we're going to talk on this issue today. And I'm going to talk a bit about the solutions, how that consumption pattern and your daily choice can make a little bit of a difference. In fact, there's one huge myth ongoing, which is that fashion is always to express your individual personality, right? So this is what most of the people think. This is not true, I'm afraid. Because if we are following trends, then following trends means you're following the masses. A trend becomes only a trend because it is shared by others and visible. So if you're following a trend, you're everything else but expressing your individuality. So let me show this example. This is a random picture I took in a bigger town in Europe. And I was sitting in a cafe, and then I saw these guys popping in, and I thought, well, they're kind of wearing a uniform, right? Isn't it? And even, if you're wearing suits, it's always a kind of wearing a uniform. And obviously what they did is they were choosing their stuff to wear because they want to feel accepted by their peers. So every time you make a choice, it's about peer acceptance. And this is one of the key functions of fashion products. Now, secondly, we have to think about the system of fashion. And the second myth in here is the fashion industry is so creative, it's so innovative. Well, I'm afraid we are not. I'd like to say so. I got an example to show you. Unfortunately, this is not the iPhone 7, because that would bring us a billion hits on YouTube tomorrow. This is the grandpa of it, the grandpa. It's from 1993, it's the Apple Newton, and well, there's not a lot of things you could do with it. You could send emails if you had someone else to send an email to it these days. And it got a massive storage of 2 megabytes. I repeat, megabytes. Right? If you compare that to an iPhone 6, you see a huge jump in innovation, technology advancement. And if you go for cars and everything else, pharma, life science, you see lots of innovation ongoing. Now, if you take a suit from 1993, a pair of jeans from 1993, a t-shirt, well, I miss the innovation in these products. Nothing has changed, nothing. So we are innovative in a certain way. So that's the smartphone. We are innovative in a certain way, but we're not really innovative in terms of technology. So that's a huge problem. Now, at the same time, we've seen something which is called fast fashion. Now, and fast fashion is simply a result of our, status of non-being innovative. Because, there's 2 ways of selling products with no innovation. First one is advertise it. Advertise it and convince people to buy something which they don't need because it's not innovative. And second big jump to do so is lower down prices, make it as cheap as possible. So we're putting down pressure on margin, putting pressure on suppliers, externalizing all kinds of costs, labor costs, skipping health insurance every time we can, in order to make it as cheap as possible. Now, and there's 2 downfalls in the whole system. The first downfall is that if we put on continuously advertisement and tell this is the lifestyle, this is the trend, this is something you have to follow, and we're talking about the must-haves of a season, so just the term puts on the pressure, we realize that this changes the perception, because maybe days back, you were trying something on and you would stand in front of a mirror and ask yourself, does it fit me? Right now, you're asking yourself, do I fit in there? And that is completely changing your perception of what is nice, what is beautiful, what you want to achieve with wearing something. And just a nice observation in this context, if you compare pure figures and you take the advertisement spendings from 2000 to 2010, they've risen up by 19%. In the same time, the cases of diagnosed, only the diagnosed, cases of anorexia in hospitals rose up by 17%. So, I mean, judge yourself whether there's a correlation, and there's other explanations for that as well. But just in terms of observation, this is of pretty importance, because it changes your perception, what you want to do and achieve with your products. Now, second thing, every time we're wearing products, we all need to have this product being produced, and that is wasting our natural resources that we have. And just as a nice number here, for a pair of jeans, we need about 10,000 liters of fresh water, which is about 70 bathtubs full, right? And these 70 bathtubs are only the production side. So I don't know how many jeans are in here, how many you have back home. Well, that water is wasted. And that is a problem, because we're bumping against natural resource limits, and we're not thinking about these issues. Now, obviously, over the time, people become more and more aware of the issue of pollution, energy waste, and stuff. So we are putting pressure on companies, telling them, yes, you need to be sustainable, socially responsible, and companies are trying to act on this one. At least they're trying to communicate so. But in fact, the side of production is just half the truth, because the reality looks different. Because in fact, if we talk about impact of fashion production or apparel production, most of the impact doesn't really come from the production side. It's you, it's me, it's the consumer. And European Union, they conducted a huge research 2 or 3 years ago, and just focus on blue and green colors in here. Don't need to look in the details. Like the blue color shows the impact of the production side. The green one is the consumption side. Just have a look. With other words, the consumption side has half of it, of the impact on sustainable issues, water pollution. And it becomes obvious if you're buying something and you're washing it every day, you're putting it in a dryer, throwing it away after having worn it 2 or 3 times, put it in a landfill, incinerate it, that's your responsibility. That's our responsibility. So in fact, what happens, and this is what some people then refer to as greenwashing, companies try to sell collections which are sustainably made, but make you throw it away, so you buy a next one. So in fact, the key driver for all of these activities are we, the consumers. Because, I mean, you can take down any handbook of marketing. Companies usually react on consumers, on the market. So if the market changes, companies will react. And we face another big problem, and this problem is the demographic change on this planet. So in the next years, until 2050, United Nations estimated that the world population is going to grow up to 9.7, 10 billion people on this planet. That's 3 times Europe, 2 times Africa in terms of population. And one thing is sure, all of these people need first something to eat, and secondly, something to wear. And if we keep on going with the traditional system, which means producing, selling, throwing it away, putting in a landfill, then we do have a problem. Secondly, in terms of production, raw material, we need cotton production to make it possible. We need water, energy supply. We need chemicals to dye our products. And this means probably negative impact on our environmental issues, on social issues, and so forth. So there is some ways to come out of this system, and obviously it's a long way to get from the situation as we have now, as we learned to deal with it, until we end to a situation where we can say, yes, this is a better way of wearing fashion. And so there's some actions to go through. And these actions, they're something that everyone can do. And these are widely discussed already, not only in literature, in academia, but also in daily life. And some of them you might know already. Reducing, which means buy less. And buying less has lots to do with the peer pressure I was talking about in the very beginning. So don't let yourself being forced to wear something because people expect you to have something new. Right now it is much more like, look what I have bought. And everyone goes like, wow, this looks great. Think about the peer pressure, and we've been talking about the peer pressure just recently here. Think about when people said, why did you buy something new? The other one was nice as well. That changes lots. Secondly, work on repairing things. Don't throw them away. There's several alternatives, and ask companies to make stuff repairable so that you actually can work on improving old worn garments, for example. Reuse stuff. Why don't we reuse our stuff more often? Give it away to someone else. Second-hand clothing, a huge market. Problem is, most of the products are not handed back into the second-hand cycle because we just simply throw them away. Fourth one, recycling. So use these materials and reuse them again. And again, that's also a question coming back to companies, because if you want to recycle something, you have to make it recyclable. And that's also calling out to politicians, lawmakers, to require stuff being made up in a recyclable way. And renting is also an alternative. People refer to it as, the Netflix for fashion or fashion libraries, however you call them. So just use the stuff instead of actually buying it and bring it back. I mean, if you go for a wedding once a year, why should you buy a suit for one wedding? Just go there, rent one, and then bring it back. If you want to have a luxury hand clutch, well, why is there a need of buying one? Rent one, so it can be used by 300 people over the year. And by the way, you're paying much less, so it makes it much more efficient. But that's just the option side for consumers and the individuals, but there is more on that one, which I call the actions which lead to the actions. So the first one, and that's a really important issue, is reading. Get as much information as you can. And especially in times of Facebook, social media, our scope of attention is pretty low. It's like 15 seconds of Instagram video, maximum scope of attention we're capable of. It's like 3 lines in the timeline of Facebook, but we don't question the information. So the more we read, the more time we have to read, the more we can start questioning the reality. Is that helpful or is it not helpful? What kind of benefit does a certain activity really bring to environment? And what is something which maybe looks good but has no deeper sense? Secondly, we have to do much more research. Much more research. Did I skip it? No, I didn't. Much more research on it, because research put methodologies on it, putting frameworks to it. How could a new system work without using too much resources? Is so important. We have no idea how to change a system which has been there for already 100, 150 years. We just know we have to find slowly our way and get an idea of how we can change really this whole industry structure. Third one is, and that's calling out especially to corporations, reinvent yourself. Yes, obviously, it is difficult having first-tier, second-tier, third-tier suppliers, having a whole value chain set up to change my structure, my procedures. But if you don't reinvent yourself, well, at least in 20 years' time, you won't be on the market. Because pressure due to the overconsumption in terms of population will put pressure on raw materials. And how can you rely on products which are not innovative, too expensive? You will exit the market. So you will have to reinvent your whole system. The fourth one is really going out to everyone again, is really taking back your responsibility. And I mean responsibility. We don't have the answers, but we can start on questioning to get to those answers. We have to take our responsibility back to say, I can make a difference, and I can ask and require from companies, from peers, from everyone else, to act in a much more sustainable way as we do it to now. And the fourth one, the last one, sorry, is probably the most difficult one, is because it won't happen overnight. We have to continuously repeat and again and try to find our best way. And I'm often asked the question, how should that ever work? And my usual answer is, I have no idea. The only thing I know is that the system as we're working on today, and we're benefiting from the system, is not a system of the future. And Gedda, head of sustainability of H&M, recently put that also very, very clear. She said, our business model is dead, sooner or later. So therefore, we have to repeat all of our efforts again and again. And sometimes we will make mistakes, and we will find out it doesn't work. But most of the time, if you find little slots, doors may open, and we find our way through to get, a better way of fashion consumption in the future without having, this "you mustn't do so, you're bad" impression in the very, very back. So if you take all that into consideration, I think we can make a really, really nice starting point today, and I thank you for your attention.